A 3-year-old boy in Syria pointed to a village he had never visited and said he had lived there before. He gave a name, not his own. He described a house, a wife, children, and the way he died. When investigators took him to that village, he led them directly to a house he had never seen. He named the man who had owned it. That man had died years before the boy was born. He then pointed to his own head and said, "This is where I was hit." When they checked the records, the previous owner had died from a blow to the head. This is not a legend. It is a documented case, one of more than 2,500 collected by researchers at the University of Virginia over the past 60 years, and it is far from the strangest one. The scientific study of reincarnation cases began in earnest with a psychiatrist named Ian Stevenson. In 1960, Stevenson published a paper in a respected academic journal proposing that cases of children claiming past life memories deserved serious investigation. Most of his colleagues dismissed it. He continued anyway. Over the next 40 years, Stevenson personally investigated more than 3,000 cases across India, Sri Lanka, Lebanon, Turkey, Alaska, and beyond. He was meticulous. He interviewed subjects, families, and witnesses. He cross-referenced claims against verifiable records. He looked for alternative explanations before drawing any conclusions. What he found and what his successors at the University of Virginia have continued to find is a pattern that is very difficult to explain away. Children, usually between the ages of 2 and 5, begin speaking about a previous life. They give specific names, locations, and details. In many cases, those details check out. And then, around the age of 7 or 8, the memories fade, as if something closes. James Leininger was 2 years old when the nightmares began. He would wake, screaming, thrashing, repeating the same phrase, "Aeroplane crash on fire. Little man can't get out." His parents assumed it was a normal childhood fear. But then James began adding details. He said he had flown a Corsair, a specific World War II fighter plane. He said he had taken off from a boat called Natoma. He said his best friend on the boat was named Jack Larson. His father, a Christian man with no prior belief in reincarnation, began researching. The USS Natoma Bay was a real aircraft carrier. Jack Larson was a real pilot who had served on it and was still alive. And a pilot named James Houston had died when his Corsair was shot down near Iwo Jima in 1945, struck in the engine, crashing into the water. Young James had signed his drawings with the name James III. When asked why, he said, "Because I'm the third James." James Houston Jr. had been the second. James Leininger eventually met the surviving crew members of the Natoma Bay at a reunion. The veterans wept. They said he knew things, names, events, details of daily life on the ship that no child could have known. The nightmares stopped when he was 8. In 1930, a girl named Shanti Devi was born in Delhi, India. From the age of 4, she told her parents she had a husband and children in a town called Mathura, a place she had never been. She gave her husband's name as Kedarnath. She described their house in specific detail, the color of the walls, the layout of the rooms, a well in the courtyard. She said she had died shortly after giving birth to their 3rd child. Her parents tried to ignore it, but Shanti kept insisting. Eventually, a teacher wrote to a merchant in Mathura named Kedarnath Shobe, matching the name Shanti had given. He wrote back, his wife had died in 1925 after childbirth. Her name was Lugdi Devi. Kedarnath traveled to Delhi and visited Shanti's family unannounced. Shanti identified him immediately before anyone introduced him. A committee of investigators was formed, including members of the Indian National Congress. They took Shanti to Mathura. She navigated the streets without guidance. She identified the house. She pointed to where money had been hidden. Money that Kedarnath confirmed existed and had since moved. She spent the rest of her life insisting she was Shanti Devi. She never married. She said no one could replace what she had lost. The University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies has now documented over 2,500 cases like these. Roughly 70% of the children in their database can be verified, meaning specific claims they made were checked against external records and found to be accurate. Researchers have identified consistent patterns. Children in these cases often show birthmarks or physical anomalies that correspond to wounds the previous personality suffered. They display emotional connections, loves, fears, phobias that match the previous life. And they almost always forget by middle childhood. Skeptics offer several explanations: fraud, parental coaching, coincidence, cryptomnesia, where a child absorbs information without realizing it and later presents it as memory. These are fair objections, and in some cases, they may be the answer. But researchers point to cases like James Leininger, where the father was actively trying to disprove his son's claims, or Shanti Devi, where a formal investigative committee found no evidence of fraud. The most honest answer science can currently offer is this: we don't know. The data exists, the pattern is real, and no existing framework fully explains it. There is something quietly unsettling about these cases, not because they are frightening, but because of what they suggest: that consciousness might not end, that memory might survive in some form, that the children around us might be carrying something older than their years, and that the moment we are born, we may not be arriving for the first time. Ian Stevenson spent 40 years on this question and died without a final answer. The researchers who followed him are still working. The cases keep coming. What do you think happens when we die? Leave it in the comments. I read every one.